Pradeep, we were talking during a couple of days about globalization.
True.
And which part music also plays
Yes.
in this process.
Yes.
And I want you to summarize
Yeah.
these conversations.
Yeah. Maybe it will help to briefly tell you about my background. I finished my master's in business administration in 1980, and after that it's about a little over 30 years. I have worked in various companies. I have headed companies in India as well as abroad. And after about 30 years of corporate life, I have my focus now is on writing. I write a lot on education, globalization, economics, current affairs, apart from leadership management. I also teach in Long Island University's India Center in Bangalore on globalization. I also teach students of management. I do a fair bit of training students and corporate, and I am also a management and media consultant. Globalization is a subject which is very close to my heart, and music is very close to my soul. One of the things that I would like to do is to discuss aspects of globalization across the world in formal environment, in informal environment, with students, with academicians, and with colleges, with corporates, because this is something which is going to shape the future of this world. To tell you a little background, till about roughly the 19th century, it was India and China which were leading the world till about end of, let's say, 18th century. And the 19th century clearly belonged to Europe, and which gave way to the dominance of US, America, in the 20th century. However, as we discuss this today, the dominance of Europe and the dominance of US has somewhat ended. In this century, the 21st century, it is going to be what we call the BRIC nations, as well as the large emerging nations, which are going to be the growth engines of the world. Okay, so let's say till 18th century it was India and China mainly the growth engines, for subsequently Europe and America, and now it is, we keep saying history repeats itself, and in the same way these large emerging nations as well as the BRIC nations are likely to be the growth engines of the world. In fact, around 2025, roughly around this time, we expect that about 2/3 of the world's total output is going to be accounted by these large emerging nations, including Brazil, Russia, India, China. At this point of time, there are some very critical issues that we need to look at it and examine them very closely, because the future of this world, if we have to improve this world and bring back the glory of world economy and growth, it's very important that it's not just the large emerging nation that will continue to do well, but we also need to carry along Europe and US in terms of getting out of recession there. There are a couple of issues which are very important for Europe. One issue I may like to mention here is about the de-youthing of Europe, which is very critical issue. There is, you will be aware that there is a declining, fertility in Europe, with women bearing fewer babies. This is one critical aspect of the problems that Europe is facing, are likely to aggravate. The second issue is By about the 2050, roughly, the world population is likely to peak to about 7.5 billion, roughly, and which is now about, let's say, 6 billion plus.
In India, it's sixth
India is about
of
1.2 billion,
all
and
population.
yes, this 7.5 billion, which is the expected population around 2050, is likely to use and tax the same resources that we have today, whether it is water, whether it is energy, whether it is environment. So it is expected that the global warming issues connected with global warming are likely to become very severe in the years to come, and we may even see some regions like Maldives, which is a small country, Indian Ocean. It is feared that this country may submerge, and there are also reports that cities like Miami, for example, may submerge. We may also lose, parts of Manhattan, which may be submerged, for example. So the future of the world is not going to be driven by, is going to be driven more by economic philosophies, and we expect that the future will be an integration of the world. It will be an economic integration of the world, as opposed to, let's say, 2 centuries back, the colonial model of the 19th century. So we are moving from a colonial model to an economic integration of the world, and this economic integration will be driven by many factors such as products, people, education, information. We are in the information age, and information, then money or financial resources, and finally art, music, and culture. So we as scholars, you may call it, or economists, or teachers, as we would like to describe, whatever, we should spread this awareness amongst all interested communities across the world, and we should help in the process of this economic integration.
How do you see that?
So the way I see it is, apart from teaching on these crucial world issues, I am also working separately on a vision of universalizing harmonies across all genres of music and integrate people across nations and culture together. So there are two things I'm talking about. One is to talk about economics and the future of this world. So I was telling you earlier that I am doing two things. One is to teach and spread awareness about globalization and the future of the world. And the second, and perhaps a little more important, is I am working on a vision of universalizing harmonies across all genres of music and integrate people, to bring everybody together, integrate people across nations and cultures. This is the kind of a vision with which I am also working apart from teaching. And specifically towards this vision, the way I have conceived to work on this is to bringing together music across all genres, musicians across cultures, and also all those companies and communities who are directly or indirectly connected to music in one platform, and all this will happen with one common vision.
And you plan to do it in India?
Yes, we would do it in India to begin with, but the event is conceived to be taken across the world, starting with Bangalore. So these are the two things that currently I am working on, and speak on a very, very broader level. I am actually compelled to, I am reminded of a very famous quote by Greek philosopher Plato, who said, music is a moral law And remember, he said this about roughly 2,400 years back.
Yeah.
He said music is a moral law. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and charm and gaiety to life and everything. How meaningful, is this words of this great philosopher, even after 2,500 years
You could say
later.
the same.
Yes.
No.
So I look forward to connecting with institutes, universities across the world who are studying, teaching, and spreading awareness about global studies and globalization. And also I want to bring together musicians across different cultures. And both this, I hope, will be an effort towards building a better tomorrow for the entire world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.